Do you believe that Gen Z deserves more respect? In a blog by Karen Cooper Cootie, she admits, we have put our present-day youth, millennials, Zoomers, Generation Z, teenagers, through many trials. When they respond to the call for activism, we should at least show them what respect looks like. Hi, my name is Gwyneth Janae Kane, and I belong to Generation Z. I've been able to live with and among those of the other generations, so I have some insight into the minds of those people. A lot of people, the boomer generation mainly, think that my generation is full of people with no spine and no work ethic. The term snowflake is used generously when describing reactions and sensitivity levels. I think that Gen Z deserves more respect than it gets. Oftentimes, people think of us as soft. It is true that many of us don't labor as hard physically as those of our forefathers did. However, in our modern times, we don't need to be measured by our physical strength. That does not define our usefulness. We deal with an incredible amount of pressure, and many are involved with social issues that in years past were only identifiable by elders. In this speech, I will tell you all about what we have to deal with mentally, how we have to navigate the internet safely with no guidance, and how our different goals and future plans does not make us weaker than the former generations. Mentally, often Gen Zers are ridiculed for being way too sensitive or unable to function without constant help. In this modern age, mental health has truly started to be recognized as essential to take care of. In the past, it was common for trauma and hard times to be just glossed over and fought inwardly. Silence was strength, and showing emotion was a weakness unless it was anger. Redkin says, "My point is, you can't just generalize a generation away. Telling Generation Z that they're a bunch of snowflakes is utterly unhelpful. If you ask me, this generation is so much further ahead than me and my mates were back when we were entering the workforce. They're focused, sensible, and conscientious. So what if they're a bit more in tune with their emotions and expectations of how they want to be treated?" You can see with this statistic that all the things that the former generation wanted us to prepare us for are not actual concerns we have. We do not feel particularly pressured to go drink or drive or to smoke. We feel incredibly pressured to excel academically or physically. We endured this pandemic where we were expected to do virtual school at home with little to no help while keeping the same grades and keeping sane. We became isolated, depressed, and anxious for our future and for everything between then and now. And speaking of doing school on the internet, in the period of time that I grew up as a Gen Z kid, I can't remember a time when I didn't have the internet. I could look up anything I wanted to know. Gen Z was raised with the possibility of anything influencing them. In the document 9 Things to Know about Generation Z, it is noted, Gen Z also is significantly more diverse than former generations. Dorsey noted, and they do not remember a time before smartphones. They have always gone through a mobile device for information, he said. If you go to a larger screen to connect or share information, you've lost them. Disturbing videos and access to a trove of websites where you can talk or meet anyone. Parents had to move from telling us the dangers of drugs to the dangers of getting trafficked because someone traced us from the internet to home. As a community, and as the first social media-centric generation, it is our responsibility to watch out for ourselves on the internet. Now we teach our boomer grandparents how to make it easier to do things on the internet without them wiring their retirement savings to a scammer. Credit is due for the children who took care of not getting hurt on the internet because the one who made it did not make it safe. And in the past, life goals were very similar from person to person and only split by gender. Men were expected to have a lovely picture-perfect family that they solely provided for, while women were expected to marry quickly and have children that they would take care of and raise until they moved out. The whole point was for tradition and for a way of life that we don't have to live today. A lot of times, when older generations see the goals that we have made for ourselves, they are unimpressed or believe that it doesn't matter or mean as much. Despite our struggles and differences, we are all just people that are influenced by the environment around us. Gen Z goals are not what the boomer goals of 50 years ago were. Our goals have to be fluid with how much our world changes every day. Jobs are made and replaced, positions and degrees dropped. With balancing social lives, graduations, workforce, and college all straight out of COVID, it is imperative for us to have goals and find balance. Parker in a Gilnick state. COVID-19 has reshaped the country's social, political, and economic landscape. Instead of looking ahead to a world of opportunities, Gen Z now peers into an uncertain future. This generation is dedicated to public action and public service. We know that ecological collapse is not a dystopian movie idea, but a real likelihood. Many will say, and to refute this argument, that we haven't gone through a war and that we haven't gone through supporting a family, so we haven't earned the respect that we ask for. We are young and impressionable and trying to make through 2020 to 2021. Anything we deal with loudly and directly. Gen Z had to think and create a name for ourselves through this craziness of a pandemic, and we've made a life out of it too. Just like Karen Cooper Cootie said, we are put through many trials, most of them designed by older generations. If we succeed in passing and overcoming this fairly outdated trial set for us, we should be able to have a voice and speak up without being ridiculed for how much time we spend on the internet. If older generations would listen to the voices of the future about problems we see, then maybe the world would work a little smoother and we would understand one another. If Gen Z is not respected, there's no reason to believe that they will show the older generations respect in return. Gen Z has made the whirlwind of modern life into a way of actually living. We are emotive and smart and just as capable as our forefathers. If you would like to learn more about the accomplishments of Gen Z, I have a few websites that showcase some of the more famous figures in the Gen Z community. There are many programs run by teens that support Gen Z ideals that you can support. As said by Melissa Batchelor Warnk of the New York Times, how fortunate we are that members of Gen Z are devoting their adolescences to correcting our country's painful course, the conditions of which elder generations created or enabled by our inaction. It's time for us to honor that work by seeing them deeply, hearing them clearly, and taking their values with the same seriousness we allow our own. Gen Z is not lazy. We are not content with how we are treated or how we are perceived. I hope my research will help some to see us for what we are. Thank you for listening.